All right, let's get started. Weight loss versus fat loss. What do we really mean when we try to say we're trying to lose weight? No, that's something we need to do. Oh, right. Perfect. Okay. Again, the reason that I want to do this is because often when I'm talking to clients or prospective clients, or when I'm just talking to people in general about health, if you ask them what their main goals are, a lot of the times it's like, oh, I want to lose weight. And really, I want to probe a little bit further about what that actually means. Like, what do you mean you want to lose weight? What does that mean to you? And is losing weight really the ultimate goal? Or is there something deeper that you're after? So the first thing we'll do is weight loss versus fat loss. Then we'll talk about how you can actually get fatter by losing weight, which is a mind-blowing concept, but I think it's really important to point out. We'll talk about recomposition and the importance of recomposition, some examples of it, and then finally some of the tried and true ways to actually lose fat. Okay. So weight loss is what you would expect it to be, except for it's a decrease in your overall body weight by losing muscle, water, fat, and bone density. So when we're talking about weight loss, yeah, it means that the number on the scale is going down, but it means the number on the scale is going down by various methods or for various reasons. Like we're just losing water, or maybe we're paring down muscle, or maybe we are actually, getting less fat, or maybe our body is in such a state that it has to pare down our bone density, and so now we have weaker bones. So weight loss is decreasing your overall body weight. It's just that number on the scale, right? And that is what typically people end up doing when they're trying to lose weight with these like crash diets or severe calorie restriction, or doing things like cutting out all carbs, right? When you do these quick fix diet ideas, that's where weight loss happens, where you are probably seeing some movement on the scale, right? But maybe it's not exactly positive movement, and you're just not even aware of it because you're so fixated on that one number, right? So weight loss is what happens when we do these like quick fix, trying to like crash diet type things by going to extremes. And fat loss, that's decreasing your overall body weight by losing fat. And in most cases, when people say I want to lose weight, what they really mean is they want to lose fat, right? Not necessarily, you don't want to necessarily lose your muscle, right? You want to actually change the way your body feels. You want to change the way your body looks. You want to change the structure of your body. And that is more of a fat loss, not a weight loss issue. That's actually the goal. When people, most of the time, when people are like, well, I want to lose weight, they really mean I want to lose fat, and I want to kind of restructure what my body looks like and change the way my body feels. Here's the thing about weight loss is that it can be easy and fast, which I know seems a little bit like a harsh reality. Like, yeah, right, I've tried to lose weight my whole life and I haven't been successful. Well, losing weight is relatively easy. Restrict your calories, go extreme with your calories, give it a couple days and see what happens. Reduce your carbs, right? Carbs actually, in order to store glycogen in your muscles, it requires, for every 1 gram of carb, it requires 3 grams of water to do that. And so you hold on to a lot of water weight when you have carbs. I'm not saying this is bad in any way, shape, or form, but it is the reason why when people do extreme things like take out all of their carbs or go keto or whatever, it's one of the reasons why you see rapid fat or weight loss in the beginning of this whole cycle, because you are flushing out carbs, which is also taking water weight with it, right? So like this quick reduction of weight is water weight, which is not, again, really getting you to your goal of feeling better and looking better, right? That's taking away the water. Sure, the number goes down on the scale, big whoop. If you feel like crap and you're still not loving the shape that you are, right? Have you really accomplished anything? You can increase your cardio or then sweat it out, go to a sauna. Like all of these things will absolutely move the needle on the scale in the direction that you probably want it to go. But the problem is that even though the needle's moving, you probably won't love the way you're feeling, and you probably won't love the way you're looking. Your body probably won't be shaping itself in the way that you're hoping. And more so, all of those things, our bodies are so adaptive. Our bodies are intelligent, like they're really beautiful, functioning organisms. And for everything that you're doing here, your body has a response. It has an adaptation. So what happens when you try to lose weight through these sorts of like quick fixes, or when you're trying to do this, you know, restrict things or cut things out or increase your cardio or just start going to the sauna, your body adapts, right? And so what happens is you start plateauing, right? And it's really, really frustrating. You're like, well, I don't know. I started running and I lost quite a bit of weight in the beginning and then I totally plateaued. Well, why? Your body adapted, right? So it's frustrating because you think you're doing all of the right things and then the number stops moving. You're still not loving who you are. And now you've plateaued, like what's next, right? So it's weight loss itself that I just kind of want that to be pushed aside, right? It's not the weight, it's not the number. That's not what we want to do. This is problematic. This is what launches us into this cycle idea where you try something and it works for a little bit and then it doesn't, or maybe it was too hard and then you get off the wagon and then you gain weight back, right? And like we end up like losing and gaining the same 20 pounds over and over. It's so frustrating, right? So even though losing, like changing the number on the scale can actually be pretty fast, it's not sustainable. And in the long term, doing it that way is not healthy, right? Fat loss, on the other hand, takes a lot of patience. It takes time. It takes consistency. You have to be more aware about what you're putting in your mouth, right? Get your nutrition on point. Choose whole, minimally processed foods. Have a balanced diet. Focus on building and maintaining muscle. Increase your daily movement, which doesn't mean that you have to go out and start running if you don't want to run. It doesn't mean that you start implementing a crap ton of cardio. Find ways to introduce a little bit more movement within your day. Right. I've had these tips before, but this is like parking farther away from the door, from the store, or going to a different level, a different, level in the building to go to the bathroom, or just getting up and moving your body for 5 minutes every single hour, or, even scale back, even moving for 1 minute every hour that you're working is an improvement over not moving at all. Right. So it's putting in this mindful effort to start making healthy choices that, yes, take time. But even though they take time, they're sustainable. And when you start seeing these changes in your body, which you will if you're patient with yourself, then that's long-term success versus this short-term weight loss, which is, the second you cut all carbs out and then you go and you eat like a bowl of pasta and all of a sudden you're 5 pounds heavier, right? And you're like, what happened? It's really, really hard roller coaster to get on if you're trying to achieve your weight loss by crash dieting. This is our sustainable approach. Fast isn't sustainable and sustainable isn't fast. It's something that I have to tell myself over and over again. Those of you who followed my story know that when I started getting healthy, it took months before me to start even seeing the scale move. It was very, very frustrating, but I kept on keeping on because I knew that in the long run, choosing better most of the time was going to get me where I needed to be. And lo and behold, it did. I just had to be patient with my body. You have to let your body have enough time to even do these adaptations that we're asking it to do, right? So we can't go into this and say, well, I've made all the right choices for 2 weeks and I'm not seeing it, I'm not seeing any huge changes. Well, sure, but give your body time to reflect the healing that it's doing when you start making healthier choices. Right. So this is one of my own personal mantras, especially when I feel like I'm getting frustrated in whatever it is that I'm trying to do. Fast is not sustainable. Sustainable is not fast. If you're going into like a quick fix diet, probably isn't going to work in the long run. Right? You're going to be disappointed with the end result eventually. So give yourself the time to start implementing things in a healthy, sustainable way. So here's the mind-blowing thing of like all of this trying to like lose weight versus losing fat is that you can actually get fatter by losing weight, which is a little bit mind-blowing. And hang on with me for a minute because this is a little bit mathy. It's not terrible. We're not going to be doing calculus or anything crazy. It's simple calculations, but you can absolutely get fatter by losing weight in the wrong way, right? By crash dieting, basically. So take this example. You take a person weighing 200 pounds with 40% body fat. Okay, now that's 80 pounds of body fat. Now you might think that that's outrageous, but actually 40% body fat is, I think, the current nation's female average right now is on average 40%. So or somewhere between 30 and 40%. So that's not actually that outrageous for our current nation, it's a nation, for our current nations where we're at right now. So you take a person weighing 200 pounds with 40% body fat. So 40% of 200 pounds is 80 pounds of body fat. Okay. So let's say this person goes on some sort of crash diet, or they end up losing 20 pounds, but they do it in a way that isn't really healthy and sustainable. Okay. And it leaves them with only actually getting rid of 5 pounds of fat, right? So the other 15 pounds were paring down muscle, or just water weight, right? Or maybe they've done something and they've impacted their bone density somehow, but only 5 pounds of their 20 pounds was fat. Okay, so now they weigh 180 pounds. So the scale moved, yay, but 75 pounds of that is fat. Okay, so let's take a look at the body fat percentage of this new person who lost 20 pounds, but only 5 of that was actually fat. So before, remember, they were at 40% body fat, and now they're at 75 pounds of fat out of 180 pounds total. They're 42% body fat, that's rounded. Okay. So they lost weight, but their body is relatively more fat, right? Which is not what we're looking for, right? That's not the healthy way to get the needle to start moving in the right direction. We don't want to do that. Nobody goes into a weight loss journey hoping they get fatter. That doesn't really make any sense. And so what you've done here by not doing things in a long, sustainable way, or this person here, is accidentally actually change the ratio so that their body is composed more of fat rather than less, even though they lost weight. So you can absolutely get fatter by losing weight, which is really, really frustrating and detrimental. This takes us into this terrible loop. The less muscle you have, the less calories you burn during the day, which means that you're going to have to start eating less. It's problematic, right? So you don't want to just lose weight. And when you're going into a healthier lifestyle, you want to focus on not losing weight, but losing fat. Those are very different goals. Like I said, losing weight, you can do that in numerous ways that are not good for you, but losing fat, that requires some dedication. Okay. So the importance of this idea, right, that like what you're composed of matters, this is what leads you into truly healthy living, right? When you go through, like, what you want to really do when you're going on a healthy journey is you want to do some recomposition. You want to change the way your body looks. You want to change the way your body feels. You don't want to focus on the number on the scale, right? Weight loss, again, does not necessarily contribute to healthier lifestyle. Okay, the goal here is to change the form of your weight, not necessarily the number itself, right? You want to lower this fat to muscle ratio. You want more muscle, less fat, right? You don't necessarily want to just see the number move, because that doesn't necessarily mean you're getting healthier, right? As we just saw, the number could be moving in the right direction as you feel, and your body could be getting less healthy at the same time. That's not what we're aiming for, right? So the goal here is to change the form of your weight. And maybe you do lose, some weight along the way as well, but you want to do it in a healthy and sustainable way, not in these quick fixes. Okay, so it's very, very clear that the fat to muscle ratio is much more important to overall health than weight. Okay, so the fat to muscle ratio is how much fat you have compared to how much muscle you have on your frame. Higher fat to muscle ratios are a precursor to all sorts of problems: metabolic syndrome, heart disease, diabetes, higher blood pressure, more fat around the tum-tum area. Okay, so this is not what we're aiming for. And more so, you don't necessarily have to be outwardly fat to have a high fat to muscle ratio. I know that a lot of us have heard of that term, like skinny fat, right? People who are thin but still pretty loose, they don't have a lot of muscle definition, flabby maybe. Those are people who have, maybe they, from an outward appearance, look like they're maybe healthy, maybe they look thin, but they have high fat to muscle ratios, right? And it's like, we tend to think that these problems like diabetes are secluded to only people who are overweight, and that is absolutely not true. there are a lot of seemingly thin people out there who also have type 2 diabetes. And you think, well, why is that, right? It's not just a quote fat person's problem. You have to be very careful about not only like you have to be careful about what you're putting in your mouth, and you also have to be careful about what your body is comprised of. For example, if you give me two people who are 200 pounds, right? And two people who are 200 pounds. I keep using 200 because it's a nice round number, okay? But you give me two people who are 200 pounds, and one has a higher body fat, like more body fat on their body. Their fat to muscle ratio is higher, and one has a lower fat to muscle ratio, meaning they have more muscle, less fat, right? And you would argue that the person with more muscle, you can argue the person with more muscle here is going to be a healthier person. Let's say the person with higher fat ratio here is somebody who doesn't do a lot of movement, right? Doesn't really make great choices with their nutrition. And this one, maybe this person is just really strong, or they hike a lot and they've got like really powerful legs, right? This person who's the same weight but has a lower fat to muscle ratio is arguably healthier than the person over here who has the same weight but has a higher fat to muscle ratio. So what you really want to work for here is lowering your fat to muscle ratio, not just lowering the scale weight. The weight on the scale is meaningless without knowing what the composition behind that is, right? So if you're like, well, I don't know, is 200 pounds healthy? Well, I don't know. What's that comprised of, right? It depends. 200 pounds on one frame can be totally healthy. 200 pounds on another one could be not at all. It depends. So really taking a look at like this fat to muscle ratio is so much more important than looking at the weight. The weight itself doesn't matter. It's what is it comprised of? So here's some examples of some recomps. Now, all of these pictures, I chose them because they are either the same or very, very similar weights, but they have very different compositions in their bodies, okay? So again, if you're thinking about like, oh, okay, this is on the left here, like this first one, they're the exact same weight, 63 kilograms, I think is about 140 pounds for what it's worth. So same weight in both of those pictures, right? But obviously very different bodies, right? Very different shapes. One is more muscular and one is less, right? And so it's important to see that even if you're on this health journey, if that scale is not necessarily moving in the way that you want it to see, that does not mean you're not making progress, right? You can look at both of these women, right? Like this one on the right over here, she weighs more in her after photo, after she did a recomposition where she was paring down the fat and building up the muscle. She has a much different shape, same woman. She weighs more in that second photo, but she's thinner and she's more shapely in terms of her muscles, right? So you have to keep that in mind when you're going on a health journey, that when you're making changes, that number is meaningless, okay? Meaningless, because you can absolutely weigh the same or even more and look completely different based on like what your body is comprised of. Here's a couple more. Again, this woman on the left, she weighs more in her after photo. She's thinner and more muscular, more shapely, right? So I think these are really, really great examples as to why we need to focus less on this little number, this weight on the scale that can be easily manipulated through just water alone, and focus more on our body composition and how do we feel about the way we look, right? What changes are happening within our body. On the one on the right, same exact weight in both pictures, arguably very different woman on the right as she was on her left. She changed, she transformed the fat to muscle ratio, right? The woman on the left, or the before pictures that have higher fat to muscle ratios, and on the right, they have lower fat to muscle ratios, and they've completely transformed their bodies without changing the number on the scale. Okay, so this is fat loss. This is not weight loss, right? Same thing, right? This woman on the left here, she's got a couple transformation photos. very different weights and also very different bodies. Okay? And then I wanted to throw a male on there too, same idea. He weighs more after and looks very, very different. Okay? So weight losses should not be the goal. That is so arbitrary. That number means nothing without understanding what's behind that number. Okay. So quick ways to do it, right? I would say, okay, well, if I'm going to focus on fat loss versus weight loss, right? The one thing is, please avoid these quick fixes. Don't get drawn into the shakes and the pills and the detox teas and the, the fad diets. Like, avoid those, because what those are doing is, yeah, they're moving the needle on the scale, but they're not giving you long-term sustainable results. And what happens is that you typically end up with less muscle at the end of those diet crashes, and which increases your fat to muscle ratio, which is not a good thing. And then it becomes harder and harder every time you go through those cycles. It becomes harder and harder to actually get healthy in a sustainable way. So what you want to do to lose fat, not just weight, is you want to protect your muscles at all costs. Okay, you want to maintain the ones you have and build more if you're not happy with your strength currently. Muscle is what gives us those shapes. Muscle improves our metabolism. Okay, so you really want to protect your muscles at all costs. So do things like resistance train. That could be even body resistance. It doesn't have to be things. You don't have to lift weights in order to have an effective resistance type workout. It can even be things like, going on hikes that have some incline to them where you're trying to push your muscles a little bit. Okay, there's a lot of different ways to resistance train. It doesn't have to be dedicated gym sessions. But aligned with that, it's later on the list here, but aligned with that is don't overdo your cardio. If you want to protect your muscles at all costs, cardio actually sends the message to our body that it can pare down muscle, because muscle is not necessarily prioritized when you're trying to do endurance type workouts. So when you do a lot of cardio, then your body's like, gosh, it's really hard to maintain this muscle while I'm also doing a lot of cardio. And so it starts paring down your muscle. Well, that can change your fat to muscle ratio in the wrong direction. So don't overdo your cardio, and support your muscle by making sure you're getting enough protein. Protein first. There should be protein with every single meal that you eat. You need protein. You've got to give your body the building blocks it needs to maintain and build that muscle. When you're looking at your diet, just eat the minimally processed foods so you're not causing things like inflammation. So you're not, putting your hormones out of whack. So you're not prompting your body to start doing cortisol spikes and storing all this fat. Make sure you're getting sleep, drink the water, and increase the daily movement. And again, it doesn't have to be anything outrageous. Just try to find little ways to get your body moving, so that you're doing what your bodies are made to do, right? Our bodies are made to move, so move them. But at all costs, don't do the calorie restriction when you're not eating enough. That will only hurt you in the long run. It's not sustainable, and it doesn't help you get to your long-term goal. Right? You get to an immediate goal, and you're like, well, now what, right? So crash diets, fad diets, way too much cardio. Just be aware of how that is maybe moving the scale, but not getting you anywhere closer to healthy. Right? So that's the difference. Weight loss can move the scale, but not necessarily bring you more towards healthy at all. And fat loss is where you start making those like sustainable, long-term, noticeable changes in your body that will improve your health in the long run. Awesome. Okay, if there are any questions, I'm gonna go over here on Facebook and see if there are any questions. Yeah, I forgot to check. Seems pretty part of the course for me, honestly. Okay, perfect. All right, that's a good one. Just the difference between weight loss and fat loss and what you should aim for. Awesome. As always, if you have any questions and you want to DM me, feel free to do that. I'm always happy to answer questions. If you're, wanting to ask me privately, go for it. But otherwise, until next time, eat more, eat well, eat happy. I'm going to stop this recording, and then I'm going to go over and I'm going to go spin the wheel to see who our winner is. Okay. So let me stop this recording first.